She was told to expect mean treatment, the kind that would break her spirit and crush her hope. A young Japanese nurse, only 22 years old, stepped off the dusty transport truck into the blinding brightness of the Texas sun. Around her, other captured women, fellow nurses and auxiliaries, clutched their small, worn bags tightly, their eyes darting fearfully toward the tall American guards standing like silent giants at the camp gates. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest, like a drum warning of danger. Back home, propaganda stories had painted the Americans as wild, undisciplined beasts, predatory men who would view captured women as easy prizes of war, to be mocked, abused, or worse. She braced herself for the yelling, the rough pushing, the leering stares that would strip away her dignity. Instead, the guards stood perfectly still at full attention, their postures straight and respectful. They were tall and strong, clearly well-fed, with crisp uniforms that spoke of order and care, their rifles held upright not as threats but as tools of duty. Their faces revealed nothing. No anger, no glee, just the calm routine of men doing their jobs. An officer approached with an interpreter by his side. "Form 2 lines," the interpreter called out sharply in Japanese. There were no insults, no rude glances, only straightforward instructions delivered with a sense of fairness. The women obeyed quickly, but inside, their minds spun in confusion. Where were the cruel taunts, the boastful gloating, the deep humiliation they had been warned about? Why did these men treat this moment like ordinary work, not a triumphant conquest over the enemy? This unexpected respect began to stir something deep within them, a fragile seed of human trust that they hadn't anticipated. Inside the intake tent, medics waited patiently with clipboards and pens, ready to begin the process with efficiency and care. Each woman's name, age, and military unit was carefully recorded, treating them not as nameless foes but as individuals with identities worth noting. Identification tags were handed out, simple yet symbolic of a system that valued organization over chaos. The rules were explained clearly and kindly. No fraternization with soldiers, no special favors, no exceptions for anyone. The interpreter repeated the camp's policy word for word in Japanese, emphasizing the importance of humanity in wartime. American soldiers may not approach prisoners outside of their official duties. Personal contact is strictly forbidden. This follows the Geneva Convention, which protects everyone's rights and dignity. The words landed like a sudden, unexpected wave, washing away some of their fears. Some women exchanged quick, wide-eyed glances, their expressions a mix of shock and tentative relief. They had braced for unwanted advances, perhaps even bribes or forced coercion that would erode their self-respect. Instead, they were being assured of an unbreakable wall of rules designed to safeguard their humanity, to preserve the boundaries that allowed both sides to maintain their integrity. As the medical staff gently inspected their wounds and health, the professionalism shone through like a beacon of compassion. Bandages were applied swiftly but tenderly, temperatures taken with precision, vaccination records reviewed thoroughly. No lingering touches that could invade personal space. No unnecessary questions that might pry into their private pains. The young nurse sat stiffly on a wooden bench, her body tense from uncertainty, as an American medic carefully wrapped her sprained wrist. He wore protective gloves, communicated only through the interpreter with polite necessity, and then moved efficiently to the next patient without a second glance back. This wasn't cold indifference born from hatred. It was a deliberate, respectful detachment rooted in procedure, the kind of thoughtful courtesy she had never imagined possible from those labeled as enemies. In that moment, she glimpsed a human value she hadn't expected, the power of restraint to foster safety and mutual respect. At the far end of the tent, a large sign hung prominently, written in both English and Japanese. No personal contact between U.S. personnel and prisoners. All requests must go through camp command. She stared at it for a long time, her mind wrestling to reconcile this message of clear boundaries with the terrifying tales of barbarity she'd heard whispered in her homeland. It wasn't indulgent kindness, nor was it outright cruelty. It was a firm refusal to cross invisible lines she had assumed didn't exist in the chaos of war. This approach highlighted a deeper human value, the commitment to justice and fairness, even toward those on the opposing side. As she followed the group toward the barracks, the realization deepened within her, like roots taking hold in fertile soil. Whatever this place was, it was governed by principles stronger than mere rumors or fear-mongering stories, principles that upheld human dignity above all. And that unexpected foundation was more disorienting than any physical insult could ever be, forcing her to question not just her captors, but her own preconceptions about what it means to be treated with true respect. The barracks were plain, sturdy wooden structures arranged in neat, orderly rows behind rolls of barbed wire that glinted under the sun. Inside, sunlight filtered softly through high windows, casting warm glows on the rows of metal bunks equipped with thin but clean mattresses, evoking a sense of humble care rather than punishment. The women entered hesitantly, their steps slow and cautious, fully expecting a grim, cell-like atmosphere filled with despair and neglect. Instead, they discovered a space of surprising order and thoughtfulness. Beds were precisely arranged, blankets folded with military neatness, lockers clearly marked with numbers for personal belongings, and walls posted with rules in both English and Japanese, ensuring everyone could understand and feel included. 2 female interpreters, volunteers from the Women's Army Corps, stood ready with welcoming yet professional demeanors, embodying the human value of empathy by bridging cultural gaps. They patiently explained the camp regulations, handing out fresh uniforms, soft towels, and printed lists of daily schedules. Breakfast promptly at 6 o'clock, roll call at 7 o'clock to ensure everyone's well-being, lights out at 9 o'clock to allow for restful sleep. No unauthorized contact with guards, the sheet emphasized repeatedly. Each line reinforced the core messages of boundaries, discipline, and predictability, values that promoted fairness and reduced anxiety, allowing the women to reclaim a sense of control in their lives. At first, the women huddled together in whispers, sharing their deepest fears and doubts in hushed tones that revealed their vulnerability. Some had believed the American guards would slyly barter favors for small acts of kindness, exploiting their desperation. Others imagined terrifying nighttime inspections filled with whispered threats that would shatter their sense of security. None of those horrors materialized, and the absence began to weave a tapestry of emerging trust. The guards patrolled their routes outside with clock-like precision, their movement steady and non-threatening, respecting the women's space. No soldier ever entered the barracks without explicit permission from a female interpreter, honoring the human need for privacy and safety. Meals arrived on wheeled trays delivered by neutral kitchen staff, not the guards themselves, ensuring no opportunities for uncomfortable interactions. When one nervous woman accidentally spilled her soup, her hands trembling from the weight of uncertainty, a civilian worker simply handed her a fresh bowl without a word of judgment or scolding, just a quiet act of compassion that restored a bit of her dignity. The young nurse sat on her assigned bunk, clutching the printed regulations like a lifeline, her mind racing with disbelief. "This is impossible," she murmured softly in Japanese to herself. "They treat us like hospital patients, with care and without demands." In these small moments, human values like kindness and equity began to shine through, challenging the women's ingrained fears and planting seeds of hope. Yet the tension didn't vanish overnight. It lingered like a shadow, a reminder of the traumas they carried. Some prisoners still harbored suspicions of a hidden motive, wondering if this apparent decency was a clever act to lull them into false complacency, only to strike later. But as days turned into a consistent pattern, those doubts began to erode under the weight of evidence. Inspections were brief, impersonal, and conducted with respect for their humanity, never invasive or demeaning. Supplies like soap, clothing, and basic necessities arrived punctually each week, demonstrating reliability and a commitment to basic human rights. Medical checkups became routine affairs, preferably handled by female staff to preserve modesty and comfort, underscoring a sensitivity to cultural differences. Not once did a guard breach the line of professionalism, their polite but unreadable faces like shields of disciplined integrity. One quiet evening, as the women aired their laundry in the fading light, a guard walked past without incident. He averted his gaze entirely, fixing his eyes on the distant horizon, a gesture of deliberate respect that stunned them more than any aggressive stare could have. It highlighted the value of self-control, turning what could have been a moment of vulnerability into one of empowerment. The young nurse, reflecting on this in her hidden diary, wrote with a trembling hand, "They do not look at us as objects. They do not speak unless duty calls for it. It's as if we are invisible except for the necessary paperwork, allowing us to exist on our own terms." This entry captured her growing appreciation for the human value of autonomy, even in captivity. This realization struck deeper than any act of cruelty ever could, piercing the heart with its unexpected gentleness. They were indeed captives, bound by wires and rules, but they were also participants in a system that fiercely protected clear boundaries, valuing equality over exploitation. For women who had been raised on tales of inevitable violation and loss of honor, this disciplined approach was its own profound shock, a testament to the human capacity for fairness amid conflict. As days blended into one another, the rhythms of camp life settled into a comforting routine, nurturing resilience and inner strength. Each morning at roll call, the women lined up in orderly fashion, were counted with care to ensure no one was overlooked, and returned to their barracks without any drama or harm. This predictability slowly chipped away at their ingrained fears, replacing terror with a budding sense of stability. No sudden night raids to instill panic, no intrusive inspections that violated privacy, no arbitrary secret punishments. Just a steady flow of order, paperwork that documented their existence humanely, and schedules that allowed for rest, work, and reflection. A bulletin board near the mess hall displayed notices in both languages. Assignments for light work details that gave purpose, schedules for mail that connected them to loved ones, and a simple sign reading, questions? Ask the interpreter, inviting open communication without fear of reprisal. These elements fostered a community where human values like cooperation and understanding could quietly flourish. One particularly memorable day, the young nurse witnessed a small but powerful act of humanity. A guard knelt down to adjust the bootlace of a fellow prisoner who had tripped and fallen, her face flushed with embarrassment. He touched nothing else, spoke no words, simply helped her stand with steady hands and then returned immediately to his post. The simplicity of the gesture shocked her to her core. It was help given without strings, without expectation of gratitude or reciprocity. He offered no smile to soften the moment, no lingering to seek connection. He merely fulfilled a duty rooted in basic compassion and moved on. This opened the eyes of many women to the fact that the guards operated under ironclad rules that governed even acts of kindness, ensuring they were impersonal and fair. Help wasn't a personal favor that could create debt or imbalance. It was policy, a reflection of a system that prized justice and equality. When mail call finally arrived, the women were provided with blank stationery and pencils, a precious link to the outside world. Rules accompanied this privilege. No sensitive details about the camp's layout, no coded messages that could endanger anyone, every letter reviewed for safety. Yet, the mere ability to write home felt like a crack in the armor of isolation, a bridge to their family's love and worry. The nurse stared at her empty paper for what felt like hours, emotions swirling, fear, homesickness, faint hope, before penning the simplest truth, "I'm alive." Around her, other women composed similar brief notes, their hands shaking not just from nerves, but from the overwhelming vulnerability of sharing their hearts. They feared punishment for even this small act of expression, but none came. Instead, it reinforced the camp's commitment to human connection within safe bounds. Gradually, a profound new emotion blossomed among them. Relief, pure and healing, like rain after a drought. These soldiers were not allies or friends, but neither were they the monsters of nightmare. They were guardians of a code that protected everyone's humanity. One serene evening, as the sun dipped low behind the barbed wire, casting long shadows of peace, the prisoners observed the guards retreating to their own quarters without hovering or intruding. The boundary was absolute, a testament to mutual respect. The young nurse whispered to her bunkmate in the dim light, "They will not cross the line. It's like a wall of glass between us, transparent yet unbreakable." Her bunkmate nodded slowly, her face a mix of lingering uncertainty and emerging comfort, unsure whether this made her feel more secure or strangely isolated. Yet, this deliberate avoidance of even casual camaraderie challenged everything they had been indoctrinated to believe about the enemy, highlighting the human value of integrity over conquest. It wasn't superficial kindness. It was deep-seated discipline, and within that discipline lay an unexpected dignity, a strange form of respect born from the choice to maintain distance, allowing each side to preserve their self-worth. The camp's rule book became as familiar as an old friend, read aloud twice weekly by an interpreter in sessions that encouraged questions and clarity. Its pages, dog-eared from frequent reference, outlined prohibitions like no gifts, no favors, no conversations beyond essential duty, drilled into both guards and prisoners to ensure equity. At first, it seemed like an imposing barrier, cold and unyielding. Over time, however, it transformed in their perception into a shield of protection, safeguarding against exploitation and fostering a sense of security. In the barracks, the initial whispers evolved into cautious, heartfelt discussions under the cover of night, where women shared their wonders and fears openly. They pondered why the American soldiers adhered so rigidly to these standards. Was it born from fear of consequences, contempt for the enemy, or something nobler, like a genuine commitment to moral values? The nurse overheard two guards conversing in low English tones one evening. Later, the interpreter translated, "Fraternization with prisoners is forbidden. Breaking it leads to court-martial, serious punishment for anyone." This revelation spread like wildfire through the group, illuminating that it wasn't mere politeness but enforceable law, binding the Americans as tightly as the fences bound the women. It underscored a profound human value, accountability, where even those in power held themselves to higher standards. At mealtimes, the separation was stark and intentional, promoting fairness without favoritism. Guards dined at distant tables, their backs turned to avoid any accidental eye contact that could blur lines. Prisoners queued under the watchful but non-intrusive eyes of civilian staff, received their portions, and ate in peace without a single word exchanged across the divide. One afternoon, a small group of women, moved by gratitude for timely medical supplies, attempted to offer handmade armbands to a guard as a token of thanks, a gesture rooted in their cultural tradition of building bonds through gifts. He refused instantly, stepping back with composure and summoning the interpreter to reiterate the policy gently but firmly. The rejection left them stunned, not out of hurt but out of awe. In their world, such exchanges created obligations and alliances for protection. Here, they were irrelevant, emphasizing that safety came from systemic rules, not personal debts. For the first time, the women viewed the Americans not as potential tormentors or saviors, but as cogs in a vast, impartial machine, a system that valued objectivity and human rights above individual whims. The nurse captured this epiphany in her diary. "Their rejection is like unyielding steel. They neither hate nor desire us. They simply perform their duties and fade away, leaving us to our own strength." This insight nurtured a growing sense of empowerment, a human value that allowed them to reclaim their agency. The effect of this consistent rejection was curiously transformative. Rather than feeling preyed upon or diminished, the women began to experience a profound safety, enveloped in a framework of rules they could anticipate and rely upon, even if they didn't fully comprehend its origins. At night, the camp descended into tranquil silence, with guards patrolling quietly, lights dimming precisely on schedule, and their footsteps echoing like a reassuring metronome of stability. This rhythm gradually dissolved their fears, replacing them with a calm acceptance that fostered personal growth. The propaganda tales of American soldiers as leering, shouting brutes crumbled under the reality of structured respect, and the notion of dishonor in capture faded away, not through overt warmth, but through the solid foundation of order that upheld dignity for all. By the third week, the camp's routines had woven themselves into the fabric of daily life, feeling almost natural. Morning roll calls, work assignments, balanced meals, and inspections proceeded smoothly, but beneath the surface, a subtle emotional shift stirred like a gentle current. The women adapted to the nourishment of regular food, the comfort of clean beds and clothing, yet their hearts and minds grappled with this alien reality, prompting introspection and self-discovery. Some, driven by curiosity born from easing fear, began to subtly test the boundaries, seeking to understand the men who guarded them without malice. The young nurse observed how one particular guard consistently paused near the infirmary during his rounds. He never spoke out of turn, never stared inappropriately, but his presence lingered like an unspoken question, a reminder of shared humanity across divides. She wondered if his silence was an eternal vow or if, one day, duty might allow for a glimpse of the person beneath the uniform. Emboldened by this, one afternoon she deliberately thanked him in broken English for delivering fresh bandages, her voice tentative yet sincere. He responded with a single, neutral nod and continued on his way without pause. This clean, impersonal rejection startled her more than any harsh word could have. It was unassailable, firm, and devoid of ambiguity, reinforcing the value of boundaries as a form of mutual protection. Whispers in the barracks intensified into more open conversations, as women shared theories in the safety of their shared space. Some speculated that the soldiers were restrained by their officers' commands, preserving hierarchy and discipline. Others clung to skepticism, believing the guards were merely biding time to reveal a darker side. But the unchanging truth prevailed. No boundaries were breached. Supplies were distributed through interpreters to maintain neutrality, injuries tended by female medics to honor privacy, creating a paradox that deepened their reflections. The women, who had once trembled at the thought of assault, now pondered the soldiers' deliberate distance with a mix of confusion and gratitude. During meals, they could see the guards sharing laughter among themselves, moments of camaraderie that highlighted their own humanity, but never extended to the captives, preserving the silent wall erected by military law and orders. For women steeped in a culture where power often bled into personal control and dominance, this intentional separation felt utterly foreign, yet it evoked a sense of liberation. "They are like shadows carrying rifles," one woman whispered during a late-night talk, her words carrying a tone of wonder. The nurse echoed this in her diary. "I expected monsters driven by base instincts. Instead, I discovered ghosts shaped by discipline, ethereal yet solid in their principles." The phrase circulated quietly among the bunks like a shared secret, bonding them in their evolving understanding of respect as a human cornerstone. Even amid this enforced distance, a reluctant respect began to take root, blooming like flowers in unexpected soil. The soldiers' refusal to engage personally wasn't rooted in contempt but in self-restraint, a value that demonstrated strength through moderation. In private confessions, some women admitted that this restraint provided a safer haven than any forced kindness could, as it eliminated the risk of manipulation or betrayal. "Better a solid wall that stands firm," one said thoughtfully, "than a deceptive trap disguised as warmth." Nods of agreement rippled through the group, affirming their collective journey toward appreciating security born from ethics. The camp evolved into its new normal. No intimacy to complicate matters, no favors to create imbalances, but also no violations to erode trust. The initial shock of capture mellowed into a quiet astonishment at being treated according to universal rules that honored human worth, allowing personal growth amid adversity. By the fourth week, camp authorities expanded the mail program with generosity, permitting one letter every 2 weeks, inspected for security but otherwise left intact to preserve authenticity. Stacks of envelopes materialized on the mess hall tables, symbols of connection and hope. The interpreter patiently guided them on addressing and signing in both languages, turning the process into a ceremonial act of reclaiming voice. For the nurse, writing felt sacred, like reaching across vast oceans to touch another world of love and memory. She gazed at her blank page, emotions flooding her, longing for family, gratitude for survival, before inscribing, "I am alive." Surrounding her, other women crafted concise notes, each a tiny confession of endurance to families enduring rations, bombings, and relentless propaganda. This mail exchange infused the camp with renewed vitality. Women bartered scraps of paper for pencils, consulted interpreters on phrasing to convey warmth without risk, and even ventured to describe the adequate meals or compassionate medical care, weaving threads of positivity. Yet hesitation lingered. Some tore up drafts in moments of doubt, fearing disbelief from home or censorship that might silence their truths. One twilight evening, the first replies arrived. Short, faded missives carried across seas, bearing the faint ink of worried loved ones. Women clutched them to their chests, silent tears flowing as expressions of profound relief and love. The questions within, "Is it true? Are you really alive? Do they feed you well?" revealed the human bond of family concern, transforming captivity from a source of shame into one of unexpected solace for those left behind. The nurse's own letters evolved, mirroring her inner transformation. No longer dominated by fear or confusion, they spoke of daily routines that built resilience, the thrill of learning a few English words that bridged cultures, and the peaceful quiet of nights that allowed reflection. She noted how the Americans enforced mail rules with the same unwavering strictness as all else. No covert notes to guards, no enclosed tokens of thanks, maintaining total separation. This unyielding policy fostered a peculiar respect. The soldiers sought no affection or loyalty. They adhered to regulations that prioritized ethical conduct. In her diary, she confided, "They accept no gifts, no kindnesses, no closeness from us. Perhaps that is precisely why I can finally sleep soundly, wrapped in the blanket of true safety." For the first time since her capture, She drifted into slumber before lights out, her breaths even and untroubled, no longer vigilant for phantom cruelties. This marked a milestone in her embrace of human values like peace and self-assurance. By midsummer, the camp pulsed with a mechanical yet harmonious rhythm. Dawn wake-ups heralding new beginnings, nourishing breakfasts, purposeful work assignments, dedicated male hours for emotional sustenance, and lights out signaling restorative rest. The raw fear of those early days had softened into a vigilant but optimistic routine, encouraging self-organization and community. Within the barracks, women took initiative. Some volunteered for cleaning to instill pride in their space. Others taught basic literacy to illiterate companions, fostering empowerment and solidarity. Even in confinement, small hierarchies of support and enduring friendships emerged, highlighting the human spirit's adaptability. They remained wary, anticipating a potential rule break that never came. The soldier's steadfastness became a daily affirmation of reliability. Keeping distances with polite firmness, they transformed discipline into an invisible yet palpable wall of protection. One crisp morning, the nurse observed a guard issuing orders to incoming prisoners. His tone was concise yet devoid of malice, pointing to wall-posted rules before retreating, entrusting details to the interpreter. A display of trust in the system. Weeks had passed without a raised voice, slap, or threat. Everything flowed through procedures that emphasized fairness. This consistency melted her instinctive fears. "They are not unpredictable wild men," she penned in her diary. "They are like precise clocks armed with rifles, ticking with purpose." While some found the monotony stifling, others embraced it as a comforting embrace after war's turmoil, a safety net woven from predictability that allowed healing. Evenings brought moments of quiet joy. Women perused donated books that expanded minds, hummed familiar melodies to soothe souls, or sewed mementos that preserved identity. The murmur of American voices outside shifted from threat to ambient normalcy, a backdrop to their resilience. Incoming letters from Japan varied. Some ignited hope with news of surviving kin, others delivered heartbreak of losses, but each anchored them to roots, reshaping beliefs amid change. The guards meticulously separated duty from emotion. No unsolicited favors, no exceptional treatment beyond standard medical aid, upholding impartiality. The nurse's view of them shifted profoundly. They were no longer tyrannical figures but adherents to a code minimizing abuse while curtailing bonds, an enigma blending enmity with ethical rigor. How, she pondered, could such meticulous people wage destruction on her homeland's cities? This question spurred deeper empathy, recognizing shared human complexity. She channeled these thoughts into sketches in a modest notebook. Meticulous depictions of barracks rows, watchful towers, coiling barbed wire. Guards appeared as elongated, featureless silhouettes, orderly sentinels in an architectural symphony. These artworks chronicled her metamorphosis. Fear-laden strokes gave way to analytical lines, portraying systems over specters, symbolizing her embrace of understanding over dread. By the fifth week, initial disbelief matured into reluctant acceptance, fear transmuting into nuanced respect, a testament to human adaptability. Nightly discussions turned candid, curiosity supplanting terror. Why such restraint? Why machines of order rather than victor's bravado? Comparisons to homeland officers abounded. Ours were overt, bellowing authority. One noted. These vanish into regulations. Affirmative nods in soft light underscored collective insight. The nurse discerned patterns in minutiae, guards retreating post-delivery, spurning gifts, eschewing chit-chat, revealing a culture of boundaries safeguarding all from ethical lapses, embodying protection's value. Kitchen duties saw distant supervision. No berating, no shoving. Completion met with nods, affirming effort. Accustomed to hierarchies blending into degradation, this equitable steadiness felt exotic yet reassuring, bolstering safety. Nocturnal reflections turned to family. She imagined her brother's astonishment at her sustenance and rule-bound guardianship over brutality. Letters reflected this. Routines supplanted fear, order eclipsed shame. "They treat us not as foes," she inscribed, "but as responsibilities." Censored yet dispatched, These missives countered barbarity myths for distant kin. Whispers posited discipline as America's essence, not armaments, but boundary enforcement amid captivity. Skeptics deemed it ruse for intel or facade, yet all conceded diminished fear. Internally, the nurse transformed. Rejection ceased insulting, affirming her beyond wartime objectification. Diary entry. Their refusal yields odd respect. Why does it evoke freedom? Late summer evenings exuded serenity. Crickets chorused beyond wire, skies ablaze in red-orange before nocturnal hush. Barracks routines mirrored guards' precision, even resistors sinking unconsciously. Captivity, anticipated dignity thief, instead imparted discipline via predictability over terror, nurturing growth. Lengthier letters proclaimed, "We are secure, boundaries unbroken. We labor, nourish, exist." Post-surrender, futures envisioned shifted, from heroic feats to serene sequences sans dread. Guards' consistency unswerving. No tokens, inquiries, indulgences beyond protocol. Youthful tests, flirtations, compliments, met retreats, redirections, reports. Not harshness, but lucid denial per policy, risking naught for sentiment. Paradoxically, this birthed safety. No singling exploitation. Rejection equalized invisibility, protection. Recalling Japanese officers' abuses. Strikes, derision, fevered treks, disposability. The contrast dizzied. Perceived strength, cruel arbitrariness, unmasked as frailty. American forbearance demanded superior discipline. Whispers ventured this fueled victory. Systems self-mastery. Risky notion, yet pervasive. Diary closed. Shadows ticked like timepieces. No tremors at sightings. Uncertainty lingered on duration, beyond wire fate, yet dignity assured survival certain. Autumn gusts rattled wire, leaf-strewn grounds. Summer glare mellowed, days abbreviated. Time morphed, from penalty to cycle. Nurse-eyed roll call, uniform constancy, yet pattern grasped. Meticulous verifications, measured strides, lucid directives, chaos-repelling framework. No longer chill, discipline shielded vulnerability exploitation. Diary, initially distance dreaded, now bilateral safeguard wall. Strangest benevolence. Peers echoed, dread to bewilderment, acquiescence, alleviation. Predictability yielded liberty. Garden afternoon, extended plant tending. Sprouts symbolized metamorphosis. Guards distant, silent, no disruptions. Soil hands, sun-kissed, war distant. Maternal musings, domestic yearnings, post-uniform existence. Victory uncertain, but indoctrinated worldview fractured. Nocturnal sense, soap, foliage. Post-war whispers, nursing resumption, shopkeeping, familial immersion. Honor-death discarded. Soldiers' aloofness achieved what homeland couldn't. Personhood beyond machinery. Identity from minutiae, blanket folds, plant care epistles, not male gazes, officer verdicts. Flashlight finale pre-extinction. Brief I meet, averted gaze, encapsulating saga. Bunkbound, blanketed. Imprisoned, distant, yet debut terror vanished. Steadiness supplanted, self-exit assured. Eyes shut, wire wind auditory. Dawn sans armament phantoms. Envisioned, homeland swells, station bustle, maternal timbre.